You are interested.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I didn't bring mine, just threw everything in my bag. Thank you. I'll give it back. Oh my goodness. This is not normal.
It's all right.
Okay. Everyone will tell you, this is so not normal. Oh. Okay.
Sitting under laboratory. Right, then, if that's the case, then I will.
No, yeah, so it just decided.
Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yeah.
Not good contact. It's right here. It just, all of a sudden, I was fine today. All right, so that's that. Okay. Whew, everybody ready? All right, so sorry, thank you all. Okay. Are we ready? We are. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for your patience. Good evening. Welcome to the Harrison Township Planning Commission meeting. Today is Thursday, March 16th, 2023, and we will start the meeting a little late. 7:07, please.
Member Boxer?
Here.
Member Devlin?
Here.
Member Duncan?
Here.
Member Mulder?
Here.
Member Tominelli?
Here.
Member Oparka? Here. Chair Murray?
Present, thank you. May I have approval of the agenda as presented, please? I know that we have election of officers on here, and we generally start the year with that, and we always wait until we have 7. If you all are prepared to follow through with that this evening, we can do that. If not, we can delay till another, but if you're ready, we'll keep that in place.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, my dear.
I'll support.
Okay, Ms. Devlin, supported by Ms. Oparka. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries, thank you. Election of officers. So Chair, Vice, Secretary. I believe the liaison is, I don't know if the liaison is up for tonight?
Not an elected position.
Okay, thank you. So Chair, Vice, and Secretary. Any
What order would
offerings?
you like to take them?
What would I like to do?
What order?
Oh, whatever.
I nominate Ms. Oparka for the position of secretary.
Okay,
Support?
we have and support. Any discussion on that motion?
Great job.
Excellent job. All those in favor of keeping Amanda as our secretary? Yes, you may. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Vice?
I'd like to make a motion to support Member Mulder as vice chair.
Okay.
Support?
And Mr. Tominello, support. Excellent. Any discussion on that motion?
I think he'll do a great job.
I think he will as well. I think he has. All those in favor of requesting Mr. Mulder to act as our vice?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Opposed?
Got lost there.
All right, motion carries. Okay, and Chair.
I'd like to nominate Chair Murray to continue on.
Support.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor of keeping me in this position?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. There we are. You
Yes.
are now the vice and will act in whenever I'm late. And our secretary continues to be Ms. Oparka. Thank you. Okay, approval of our minutes from our February 16th, 2023. And you'll note that the ones that came in the packet, I believe, Samantha, you sent out a new version through email, I think this morning or yesterday.
I'll make a motion to support the minutes, the most recent minutes that show the 9:33 adjournment time of last meeting.
Thank you.
I'll support that.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Devlin, supported by Ms. Oparka to accept the approval of the minutes for February 16th, 2023. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Ms. Oparka,
Case,
first item.
case number 0423S, Holzbeck Investments, Jefferson Place.
Well, hello. How are you this evening?
Good evening, very well.
Good, thank you for your
Chris
patience.
Holzbeck, 239 North River Road, Mount Clemens, Michigan. Developer of Jefferson Place condominiums. We are here for preliminary site plan. We've made most of all the changes from last meeting when we were tabled, with the exception of major engineering. We do plan on proceeding to the major engineering with the engineers and so forth if we get preliminary approval. We are asking for 28 condominium units. That would be the first major development within your downtown district, bringing $7,000 to $10,000 a month in tax revenue and $100,000 plus a year, which should help the residents get the roads paved eventually a little quicker. We have added an option on the front of the site plan for a 10-foot walk, which I believe was requested by the board last time. We show, Adam does not have the updated plan, but between the apartments and the new condos, we added the landscape buffer on plans that Sabrina should have, and I believe I might have forwarded them to whoever's email that I had on the board. But we did want you to know that we're going to request a variance because we don't feel that the condos should be zoned residential. They are multifamily. They don't look like they're going anywhere quick, but that'll be up to the ZBA, I believe. We've pretty much there except for major engineering. We'd like to get preliminary approval so we could get the show on the road.
Thank you, Mr. Holzbeck.
Any questions? Oh, we did move the sidewalks. I did not realize that the city sidewalks were on our property. And Adam pointed out that they should be in the right-of-way. So we did move the sidewalks on Pontchartrain and Lance Cruz. On Pontchartrain, as he's going up there, we stopped the sidewalk at the approach as requested by the commission last month. And then on Lance Cruz, we moved it to where a normal city sidewalk should be, 1 foot in front of the right-of-way, meaning that all the existing sidewalks should have to come out. In doing so, we created 4 extra parking spaces in front of Building A. They were 18 to 19 feet on the previous plan. They're 20-foot something now, which would make them legal parking spaces for those 2 units. So the plans that you have in front of you, I believe, we have 6 extra spaces, and that does not count the 4 additional ones that we were able to add in front of Building A.
So the 4 additional ones are on the plans that we haven't seen yet.
Correct.
But
We submitted
will
the
be
plans the day after we got the reviews and hoped that the board would have all the updated plans this time. But that obviously didn't happen.
Well, if they're, so submitted in the time frame that's required to be passed along to the engineer and the planner and then ultimately copied for us.
Correct. No, we had the original plan submitted, and then we got the reviews back, same as before, but
Okay.
before we redid them, I think we still have all the requested changes that the board wanted.
Okay. And the engineer and the planner haven't seen or haven't reviewed the changes past what we have.
Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
reviewed any
Okay, got it.
revised plans.
Got it. I just want to make sure we're all looking at the same, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So-
Yep, the changes on the resubmitted plans from this week are basically, I would say, more bonuses than anything. 4 additional parking spots that weren't needed. The 10-foot sidewalk going down Jefferson. And obviously, Adam, this doesn't show the sidewalk in the right-of-way, correct?
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, the sidewalk just shifted a little bit on your side of the right of way.
correct. But these are real close.
I'm sorry?
These are real close.
Okay,
The sidewalk, can I ask a question?
please. Nope, go for it.
The sidewalk shifting doesn't impact any of the landscape plan then?
Well, I mean, you can kind of see in this area, you've got the trees that are proposed, on the private side of the right-of-way line.
Okay.
So
that's the
the
right way.
sidewalk will be shifted, that's probably 10 feet maybe, to the, just on this side of the green shaded line here is the right-of-way line.
Okay.
So it should not impact the trees. Maybe this tree here might need to have been moved.
It didn't eliminate any trees. They might get shoved a foot or two one way or the other.
Anything else to add? Either? Anything else? Okay. Okay, we are in possession, and I'm assuming you received also the letter from the planner and the engineer as well, the new review.
Yes, we did, and we have talked since we've got each review.
Okay, hence the updated plans,
Correct.
okay, that we will have shortly. Okay. Commissioners, we have before us a new letter from the planner dated March 10th, a new letter from the engineer, I'm not sure when that's dated. I have printer issues, thank you. We have our fire prevention letter, and then we had some information supplied to us from Selfridge, and then we had a couple of residents supply some additional information. So, Commissioners, you've had an opportunity to review the plans and the letters. Please bring your questions forward,
I have a couple of questions.
please.
The proposed scenic pond. So, good thing we don't have, saying before this, because this is the very thing that they're advising us to not approve. Areas that retain water and create wildlife
An attraction.
attraction. Not only would saying have a problem with it, but this is also something that, the county would have a problem with as well. They like that 48-hour drawdown. One thing that I kind of alluded to before, maybe more strongly than alluded to, is that the Murdoch-Ballard drain runs alongside this property, across the corner, and then further on to the lake. And you will have to tap into either that drain or the county roads drain. Either way, they're going to have quite a lot to say about the location and size of your pond.
And Danielle, the pond is a detention pond, not a retention pond, so it will not hold water for more than 48 hours.
Okay, it says proposed scenic pond. It makes it sound like in the
We
description.
we
that it
don't know
will
the
be.
exact size of the pond. We know we have enough room for it, but the major engineering, when we determine the amount of stormwater and everything that is going to be provided by the hard surface, will give us the size dimensions, but at the last meeting or even the prior one, we talked about retention and detention.
Right,
And we will be doing a detention
Okay, 'cause
plan,
this
not a
makes it-
retention.
it makes it sound like that it is proposed to be a pond, just based on what's written here. And,
We can change, it's semantics, we can change it to, gravel.
Well,
Well, the
yeah,
reason-
actually, if you're gonna speak, you gotta come to the podium so we can get you, but, and I
And
think
the
you're
reason that
gonna.
I'm bringing this up is that, it's very likely that the county, Public Works, Drain Commissioner's Office will require this pond to be different. You'll have to show how you're gonna tap into either the county drain or the road drain. And that could very well move the location of the pond and maybe a building. So that's why I had suggested a few meetings ago that you talk with them right away, because the standards have changed from the past couple years ago. And you might find that you're having to redo some engineering that you didn't think you were going to have to do. And it could involve even moving buildings to try and get, and tap into that drain. So, I just want everybody to be aware that that could change this preliminary plan. So that's one comment.
We will be working with the county, and if it is an issue, we'll have to come back and run a site plan if a building gets changed. We were fairly cautious with talking to the county months ago. I've talked to the county even as.
You have not talked to the engineering plan review at Public Works, because I asked them.
No, I've talked to the road commission and water and drain. But we'll have to do whatever the county tells us.
And that is, you have to store at least 1.2 inches of stormwater on site. And that developers are having a hard time doing that. So, it's not only ponds, it's other measures like cisterns, rain gardens, different things that you'll have to do to achieve that number of, that amount of storm on site. And again, that could change your, design. I did take a look at the new plans, I was able to do that. And some of the things that have been pointing out as problematic are still on those, like the site plan still shows this south of Shook Road. The incorrect numbers of the 2 and 3 bedroom units are still wrong on the newly submitted plans.
Well, I did exactly what, Adam,
I mean, the ones that I got by email, I looked at today, and it was different than this, but it still had those numbers incorrect, so you might wanna check that.
we've changed it half a dozen times.
Well,
I
maybe
will
we
check
got
to
sent
make
the
sure,
wrong
but
ones.
the last time I did my revisions, I did exactly as, I actually took Adam's numbers, not my own, put them on there. I mean, and I went through and counted up all the floor plans, and I double, triple checked.
Well, in one place they were changed, in 2 others they weren't. So,
Consistency on the site plan is.
well, I mean, the notes are wrong, so if what we
Well, I
were
mean-
given is the right one.
I'll take another look and make sure that every listing,
On the landscape plan, the entire screen is spruce trees. It's not very good to have every single tree in your screening be one species, because then what happens is you get emerald ash disease or something like that and knocks them all out, and then you don't have any more trees. So we recommend that it would be a mix of, even if it's one other species, just so that if something comes along and kills all your spruce trees, then you'll still have
Sure,
something
that's
there. You have pines shown on your plan as well. It seems like it would be easy enough to sprinkle those in. And then I think that you'll probably find you have to move a lot of dirt. So it seems to me that a berm in any location wouldn't be too hard to achieve. Because you'll be moving, whether you're digging a pond, wherever it is you're digging it, and all your bases, so.
We have berms down at least 2 property lines, and we'll have to put it in between the multiple apartments and the condominiums if we
Yeah.
don't get the requirement there.
So, I'm
don't-
struggling to see what your hardship will be, for getting a variance. And, it's not the current use that these regulations are after. It's what happens if those burn down. They can't rebuild apartments if they burn down. They'll have to comply with the current zoning. So that's what that regulation is about, not what's sitting there now, but what could be there.
So if this board wants to see the major berm down between the apartments and the condos, we'll do it.
And then will you be removing the wall that is behind the pump station that's at the corner of Jefferson and Lance Cruz? There's like a wall there that is right behind the pump station.
I
'Cause
would
your
have
sign
thought
is-
that would have been a Harrison Township easement there. We have no plans on doing anything different with the pump station.
Okay, because then I'm wondering, do you really want your monument sign right behind that wall? You might want your monument sign somewhere else where it can be seen.
Correct.
Okay, that's really all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Hunter.
I did my homework.
Yes, you did, and thank you.
On the revised plans that we were emailed, I don't know if we're allowed to reference those, but the concrete walk,
I'm just gonna jump right in and say, I don't think we can, because not all of us have, I saw them, but I didn't review them because our engineer and our planner hadn't reviewed them. They weren't officially provided by the planning department, and our secretary, so I'm not sure. I don't think that we should openly discuss and make a decision based on information on the new plan purely because we haven't had the professional review.
Well, the applicant's going to mention the new
Yeah,
plans and
yeah.
talk about the things that they've done based on the new plans.
I guess my comment would be in regards to the sidewalks, which we still show 5 foot on here, but we determined last time that it was consistent with all of our other plans. It's consistent with, as a township, we're seeking funding constantly to add bike paths. And in the new plans, it still says optional. It shows the 10-foot wide, and it says optional by it. I would just, if we were going to approve this today, want to put it in writing that the 10-foot wide path is, he says there's no problem making that happen, so let's make sure that it's in writing.
Up until a couple days ago, we didn't have anything in writing that said that it had to be a 10-foot path or an 8-foot path. I think Adam provided something on Tuesday showing that they adopted.
Yeah, I provided copies of the several documents that you had referenced.
The complete streets plan, the parks and recreation plan, the
Waterfront
county,
redevelopment
yeah,
plan.
waterfront redevelopment plan. It's also in the county's mobilize Macomb plan. It's also in SEMCOG's regional Great Lakes Way plan now to have a 10-foot wide path down.
So if it's written in black and white and according to code, we're gonna have to build the entire project according to your codes. So we have no problem with that.
And then, in regards to Danielle's comments, I guess my question would be for Dave about the stormwater management on site. Is that, I mean, that's what you'll review, right? And make sure it's consistent with the county and our I'm assuming we adopted the county standards.
Yes, so the township has adopted the county standards. At the preliminary stage, we don't get into a lot of the engineering detail, but a couple of the things that we do ask for are just some, even, close calculations that show, rough calculations that show how much area they need for the pond, so that we know that the footprint that they're reserving for the pond is gonna be okay, and that it's not gonna move buildings and shift roads and things like that, because those are the things at the preliminary plan stage that we wanna get locked in and make sure that they're good to go with. So we don't ask for a lot of detail, but we do ask for at least some calculations showing that, you know, it's on an order of magnitude, it's in the right spot, and it's the right size. Commissioner Devlin brings up excellent points, and they're reiterated in both of our engineering review letters, that they need to show us how they're getting stormwater from the pond out to the drain. You know, they need to show us the water main and other things we've requested, so, yeah, I echo her comments 100%, right on target.
Thank you. Anything else? Any other questions regarding the engineer's letter, water service, sanitary sewer, storm management, stormwater management, or the site plan layout? Okay. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the fire prevention letter, or the fire marshal's letter, and then we'll dive into the planner's letter. Mr. Shackett has indicated that the fire department has conducted the plan review. The plans submitted were reviewed using the current, or the 2015 International Fire Code. The deficiencies that were found on the previous review have been corrected. The applicant clarified that the buildings are going to be built under the Michigan Residential Code, which is not part of the 2015 IFC, and they will be separated by firewalls. And then each unit is a private residence, and sprinklers are not required. There are fire hydrants located on the plan, and as stated on the plans, the final location will be determined by engineering and the fire department. He indicates that he'll work with the applicant on the final location and placement of the hydrants. The fire department has no issue with the site plan being approved. Any questions or comments from the commissioners regarding Mr. Shackett's letter? Okay. we go ahead and move on to the planner's letter dated March 10th. Thank you for clearly spelling out our, all of the elements from the last meeting. That was very helpful. So the project details are clearly defined. The recent conditional rezoning is clearly defined, and the condominium requirements are clearly defined. The revised preliminary site plan review comments are listed, in addition to a clearly labeled grid indicating the parking requirements. And then the ultimate comment, as noted earlier, it's our responsibility at the preliminary site plan stage to evaluate the overall plan of the site, including the basic road and unit configurations and consistency of the plans with all applicable provisions of the Harrison Township zoning ordinance and our master plan. It is the planner's opinion that the preliminary site plan demonstrates general conformance with ordinance requirements. However, as noted above, within his letter, several revisions and additional details are needed to be provided for final site plan review. And then again, this is initial plan review, or preliminary plan review, right? So,
This will have to come back,
yeah,
if you approve the preliminary plan, they will need to come back one more time with the final site plan.
okay,
First in front of you with planning.
right. And, yeah, clearly defined plans with all of the elements. And so the deficiencies that we've, that are labeled here are
Yeah.
purely for final.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the notes, some of those issues with the correct counts for the number of bedrooms and units, just the consistencies across the different plan sheets. Probably the biggest discussion that we had with regard to kind of the site layout was the parking at last month's meeting. And, they have added parking spaces to this development based on the number of bedrooms and the number of units. They are providing more than what is now required by the ordinance. They would be required to provide 103 spaces. They're providing 108 spaces. 40 spaces are in garages, 40 spaces are in driveways, and 28 spaces are visitor spaces. And they've kind of relocated where those visitor spaces are on the site to be consistent with the recommendation request from the Planning Commission last month to make sure that there's sufficient visitor parking that would serve the different buildings here.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners to the planner? Any questions from the applicant to the planner regarding the contents of this letter?
No, we've had many conversations. I think we're on the same page.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners to the applicant regarding the planner's information? Okay,
Well, my question is, what happens with this revised site plan now? That was submitted but not reviewed?
the one sent an email?
Yeah, so that's up to you. From my perspective, at this stage, I believe that we have sufficient information. I think the biggest item that, could potentially change is the size of that pond. It could affect the layout. We would only know that until they, determine those details.
And then that
Final
process,
site plan, we'll need details. We'll need additional details, so we'll know better about the sizing of it. But, as far as the zoning requirements, setbacks, parking, building location, green belt width, at least along the property lines, it seems to be in place, and so, my recommendation is that I think you would be able to move ahead or say, yes, we can approve this at the preliminary stage to be able to have them provide some of those additional details and come back to us for the finals.
We'll incorporate the
And
changes
as
into
far
the
as-
final.
Yeah, as far as the revised version that they, provided by email, I think what you could approve this plan that was provided in your packets originally. With some of the
Subject to.
comments, maybe that were mentioned, such as the 10-foot wide pathway along Jefferson, and say, incorporate our comments into the final version that is ultimately submitted to us. So we don't necessarily even need that revised version,
Okay,
or need to worry about that
Right.
necessarily.
because they may still be making changes
Yeah.
yet.
Right.
So,
Well, like the 10-foot wide, if we request it, so that.
The landscape
change in
plan.
that sense,
Discrepancy
right?
in
And
the number of bedrooms and so on.
maybe a couple more notes will need to be revised.
be corrected, right, okay, thank you.
And then we could add, in addition to explicitly following all of the requirements, and, I mean, that's,
Yeah, no, I
Right,
just had a
yeah.
question on the procedural, how we were going to handle that, but that makes perfect sense, thank you.
Adding tree comment too. I think that's
landscaping.
important.
Okay, any other questions?
Madam Chair, I just have one reminder.
Please.
You need to get me your conditional rezoning agreement, that one small amendment to it, send it over.
And Rosemary, we can't hear you?
I couldn't hear.
Oh, I just wanted to let Mr. Holzbeck, know that we had one small change to his conditional rezoning agreement, and he was gonna get it back to me. I still need it.
Mark had that done.
He did call me, but then he indicated he was gonna call you because he didn't want to step on Mr. Manzelo's toes, so that's between you guys, just get me the
Not a
revision.
problem.
So I didn't hear all of that.
It was just the conditional rezoning that was approved by the township board. I'm still waiting on a small change for it so it can be recorded.
Okay.
But I think he needs to find out.
But I'm not sure.
Did you want to ask?
Well, I asked him about who owns the wall, and he believed that, if I heard you guys correctly, you believe that wall is owned by the township, but I'm not sure.
I would think there's an
I think of the
easement for
property.
that pump
Did
station.
we
Part of
have
the
some
property.
conversation regarding the pump station? Didn't I see that?
Well, the wall is separate from the pump
Yeah,
station.
but the location?
It's right behind it,
So,
and it's like
At an
a
angle,
corner,
yeah.
yeah. And there's, it looks like perhaps it was a monument sign for the school or something. It was some sort of landscape feature at one time, I'm not sure.
Oh, it's not like serving a purpose for the pump station.
I'm not sure, but I don't believe so, based on the discussions that I've had with engineering.
I believe the wording on the plans is that we would respect the existing easement that the pump station is on.
But this wall, I'm not sure whether it's part of the pump station. The wall and the material, the neglected landscaping material.
Danielle, I hate to say, I've been by there 1,000 times, and I don't know if the landscape's overgrown the wall, but I don't remember the wall, so I will take a look at it.
It is overgrown.
So
Yeah.
like I say, I've been by there for the last 20 years and don't remember the exact wall that you're referring to.
I see.
Yeah, it's on,
It's like
It's on-
landscaping bricks.
yeah, yep.
It must have been like a sign for.
Yeah, it's not part of the pump.
You can see it on the other site plan. It's never what?
I'm not sure if,
I would remove it.
say that again?
I would ask.
I mean, I think it's their property now, since it's a part of your property.
I think it's
But
on your.
if it's our property, we'll clean it up.
I mean, I guess I would look at the easement language, but I mean, it's a structure that was probably built around the same time.
Many years ago.
Yeah, you're not gonna want it to stay, I'm thinking.
We're definitely gonna want the corner to look nice with the new development.
And it's gonna, be weak, and collapse or something at some point.
No, I have no problem with looking at that.
Okay, anything else?
I got two questions for the applicant.
Mr. Batcha?
Could you, so when we read the phasing, I mean, it's clear what buildings are part of phase one and what are part of phase two. And your notes talk about what would be included in phase one and phase two. So fine to that. Did we discuss in the past actual timing though? Is phase two to begin at the completion of phase one?
I can.
If the economy supports it, definitely. Absolutely. If it stays the way it is right now, we'd like to build the whole thing out within a 24-month period.
Got it. And then as it relates to utilities then, so the initial building permit's gonna be only phase one. So for utilities, the utility's already there serving that building, so there's gonna be no logistics associated with sizing utilities under phase one to support phase two. It's a question to the engineer.
I would think, if I could interrupt, that we would have all the engineering for both phases submitted on our final site plan.
But then, would you may, I don't know, I don't see the utilities, you may have to build the phase two utility sizes with phase one. I don't know yet, I'm assuming that would be part of your evaluation, that however the final utility layout is going to occur, that if utilities are running through phase one that serve phase two, they'll be required to size them to serve phase two initially, even with the phase one install.
Right, the sanitary sewer and water are already existing, so that's not an issue.
That way there's no,
We would be looking, I guess, at how they're proposing to drain the phase one area in relation to the phase two. I would assume that the pond is gonna have to be built with the phase one, because the property's being developed, and so
Right.
there's gonna be some phasing and some logistics involved in how much storm sewer pipe gets installed and how that pond gets dewatered and those types of things.
Got it, so,
Overlap.
and that's where I was going with the question, that even though I can see, and we can all see lines of demarcation calling phase one, there may be work outside of phase one just to support utilities for the whole site.
Yep, absolutely.
Second question was, when you opened up the presentation today, you made a comment that you incorporated most of all the changes recommended, which sounds like you didn't incorporate all of them.
There were, when we did the plans, there were still some questions on, we couldn't find anything in black and white regarding the 5-foot sidewalk being a 10-foot sidewalk. But we got that information, I believe, on Tuesday, which hence the reason why when we come back for site plan approval, that'll be a 10-foot sidewalk. And then we do have two plans, one showing the major berm in between the apartments and our condos. The plan that you're looking at in front of you shows a minor landscape area. And if we have to put a major landscape area there, those are the two issues that I don't believe got addressed from our last meeting. We did change the parking, and in front of Building A, those 4 parking spots are not accounted for in the 108. So there's, on the revised plans, there should be 112 legal parking spots, which would put us, I believe, 12 over. We need 103, and we should have 112 total. Those driveways were like 17, 18 feet, and we keep pushing that main road in front of Building A as far toward the right-of-way as we can, just to give the people in Building A more privacy and allow the parking in front of Building A.
Thank you.
anything else, Mr. Page?
And Danielle did have comments on the burning bush and the
Privet.
privet. So I didn't think that was a major deal with preliminary site plan, but we're more than happy to sit down and have somebody email us what shrubs or trees you like, and we'll have Precision adjust the landscape plans.
I don't think that's a major deal either, seeing as how you're not next to a pristine wooded area that would be threatened by the privet escaping and invading that area. But I do think the mixing up the evergreens on the berm would be important.
All the berms we've did in the past have been mixed, so I agree.
Any other comments or questions for the applicant?
No questions, I just have a comment, and I'm gonna preface this with the fact that what I'm gonna say does not take away from all the questions and comments that have been made by any of the commissioners or the engineer, because I appreciate everything that's been said and the attention to detail we're giving this. However, I feel we are hanging up on details that will be better served under the site plan review and not the preliminary
The
review right
final.
now. Yes, and it's unless the engineer or the planner have anything that I'm missing, any concerns that need to be dealt with right now with the preliminary, I feel like a lot of this will be addressed later on. That we're seeing, like, conceptual or the preliminary layout landscaping, I would like to see the buffer, to the residential that we've seen on the second submitted one, but not on this current one that we're reviewing now. But other than that, I see the preliminary, what we're seeing now fitting what the requirements for a preliminary review.
Well, the pond and the sidewalk
I-
are kind of a big deal.
I agree.
And I do have one question. I just want to make it known that we have received a couple of letters from residents who live on Pontchartrain, and they bring forward some items that we've discussed this evening, and then some additional considerations. And I just want to ask one question to the fire chief, and thank you for being here, first of all. The driveway issue, driveway on Pontchartrain and an entrance and exit on L'Anse Cruz. It was mentioned at our last get-together that it was I don't know if you used the word requirement, for ease of access of your fire equipment, should you need to get in there and put a fire out. Could you expand on that for just a little bit?
I'm not sure exactly what area you're speaking of.
Say that again,
What
please.
area exactly are you speaking of?
Well, there's an entrance and exit, there's a single drive on Pontchartrain. I don't know, Adam, if you can bring, yep. There's a single entrance and exit on Pontchartrain, and then there's a dual entrance and exit on L'Anse Cruz, I think, and then,
Well, these are existing.
Those get
In
eliminated.
Phase 2, they won't exist.
right,
So proposed there'll be one here on Lance Cruz.
Okay.
And a second.
and the
here
second one on Pontchartrain. Okay,
Those
so
are the
there
two
is,
entrances.
There's two
so
entrances.
those other are the construction,
No, those are the two driveways that exist that
to,
serve.
right, today, but
Existing
will be
building,
used
yeah.
for, but wasn't there discussion on,
They'll stay as part of phase 1, or one of them will stay.
They'll be used for construction, exactly what you're saying.
But ultimately, they'll go away when phase 2 is built
so we would have one entrance and exit
on each.
on each street?
Correct.
Okay, all right. And that is sufficient?
That meets the fire code, yes.
It does meet the fire code?
Yeah,
Okay,
Fire code
excellent.
says that over a certain level of occupancies, there's gotta be two entrances, and this meets that.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to get that clarified. Okay. Okay, any other discussion? A motion?
Madam Chair.
Sir.
If anyone is thinking about the screening adjacent to the apartment building as part of their motion, I would say that maybe it doesn't need to be a part of any motion tonight. They have the right to ask for a variance to not provide the major screen. I tend to agree that there is not sufficient justification for it, but that's the ZBA's issue. Either they may still try to ask, the ZBA may approve or deny. It's kind of outside of our hands. If they deny, they have to provide the major screen. So I don't see that it's necessary to be
be
included in
explicit.
your motion
Okay.
this evening.
Thank you.
I'm fine if we have a motion that you want the major screening there on the final site plan, we'll have a major screen there. Takes that equation right out of it.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary, site plan review, for case number 04-23-S. With the conditions that the applicant is gonna add the screening, along the residential, unless, the ZBA approves the removal, and with the addition of the 10-foot sidewalk along Lance Cruz.
Did you want to include the discussion, the comments made in the professional letters, the planner's letter and the engineer's letters? And do they need to be? Since they're really more for final review.
They're the corrections that we asked for,
Yeah,
so subject to.
yeah, so, yeah.
I agree, subject to it, the corrections, that are requested by the planner and engineer.
All right.
And that the pond is detention only, not retention.
So did you want to second that and ask that to be added to the motion?
I'll second, and I ask that you add that the pond is not a pond, but a detention area,
I agree.
and also that the tree species be varied.
I
in
agree to that
areas
also.
that are required screening.
And the discrepancy in the number of bedrooms and so on, that would fall under,
That's addressed in the.
That's in the letter.
in the letter.
yeah, fall under the subject to letter info. Okay,
Yes.
got
The
it.
correct vicinity map isn't in the letter, but it
There
was
we
in
go.
the previous one.
All right, I think we've got it covered. Motion by Mr. Mulder, seconded by Ms. Devlin, to approve the preliminary site plan review of case number 04-23-S, taking into consideration, subject to the professional letter information, a 10-foot sidewalk, proper screening between the two locations, the residential and the planned condo, subject to any requirements by the ZBA. The landscape considerations regarding the trees, did I say the pond? A full, clear decision on the pond.
It's not a pond, it's a detention.
Thank you, size and detention declaration.
Yes.
Got it. Anything else? Okay, any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, just
Mr.
quickly, I thought I heard, which is fine, I thought I heard the applicant say that by our motion, we could just dictate that the screen is gonna be there and just take it out of the hands of ZBA right now. So,
Well, he
there
still
was
has the
words subject
opportunity
to.
go if he wants.
We
Yeah,
will
that's what
not
he
be
said.
going to ZBA.
Yeah, they just won't go, we'll just say, put it in and
So all
move on
required
with it.
screening.
All
Yes,
required
all
screening?
required screening.
Less meetings, the better I can get building.
Say- I missed that. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Holter.
We will try to make the final site plan a little less painful.
I know you will.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, hopefully with all this work,
Good luck.
although they might not have get that well, because it both of the old areas. Quite an impressive, whatever was there. I think it was a memorial or something.
Right?
There's like more there than just some overgrown bushes.
Okay,
It's treasure.
no public hearings, no unfinished business. We do have some new business. Our presentation from Selfridge?
Evening. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Mike Urban. I'm a pilot with the 127th Wing. So on behalf of myself and the team, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to address the board.
Thank you for coming.
Slide. So this is a team you'll be hearing from, with the exception of Mr. Huffman at the bottom from our public affairs. He's here to clean up any messes I make by misspeaking, so hopefully you won't hear too much from him. Also from Ms. McKay, she sends her regrets. She's not feeling well, so Mr. Baker will be briefing her part. So Just to start out with, I just want to make sure we're not here to dictate or try to influence you to make any decisions or act in any directions. We're here to hopefully collaborate with you and present some information. Maybe you already know it, maybe you've forgotten it, maybe it's new information. But even with that new information, it's up to you to decide what to do with that information. We hope you'll take it in consideration for your future plans and take some actions, but if you don't, that's obviously your purview. So we understand, slide please. So we understand what we do on the base affects the community. Here's some acronyms you'll be hearing about from our expert slide. But we understand what we do affects the community. It might be something like, say at night, you hear an airplane go overhead, reduce that noise that not everyone appreciates. We don't do that without consideration, but sometimes our missions require our airplanes to come back at times that aren't ideal. But just like what we do in the community affects, what we do affects people out in the community, what happens in the community can affect us at the base. Could be something from where buildings are located or how hall structures are, even something from where different environmental elements are located to produce or to attract wildlife that may have either a figurative or literal impact on our mission. So you'll hear more about that from our experts up here. So again, thank you for the opportunity. And before I hand it over to Mr. Baker, I just wanted to give out a thanks. It's really gratifying to go out in the community almost every time you go out to get gas or run an errand. Well, thank you for your service. So for the support for that and all the other ways, I want to say thank you. So I'll hand it over to Mr. Baker.
Thank you.
So, Ken Baker, 127th Wing Environmental Office. I work as the ACUS program manager at the installation. I'll explain what ACUS is in a little bit here. But I just wanted to, reiterate what we talked about earlier. These are just recommendations. Everything we're going to kind of be talking about tonight with respect to FAA advisory circulars, ACUS, and those kind of things, they're recommendations to the local planning commission to help them make informed decisions. And I will talk a little bit about the S3, the Sulfur Sustainability Study, as well in a little bit. And I wanted to reiterate too, that's under the recommendations thing. That's what the Sulfur Sustainability Study is. That's recommendations as well. So the ACUS program is the Air Installation Compatible Use Zone program. And this all started back in the 50s. With respect to airports and stuff, and the noise issues with respect to them, the safety issues and concerns. And over the years, they developed these land use recommendations with respect to how airfields are set up. And it took quite a while for the DOD to come up with these standards that are very similar to FAA standards that came out, but it took, you can see from the 1950s all the way up to 1973 is how long it took to do that. And what the ACUS program takes into consideration is economic viability of the community, safety concerns with respect to accident potential zones, as well as noise and how that can affect the community. And they came up with these land use standards and recommendations based upon how those type of activities are affected by those areas. Next slide. So these are a couple, I'm not going to go into these in depth, but these are just kind of some of the guidelines and stuff that we follow under. There's General Service Administration circulars, there's the DODI, Department of Defense instruction, Air Force instructions, and then there's an Air Force handbook that is pretty much the ACUS program manager's guidebook on how to implement the program. Next slide. So the heart of the ACUS program is the ACUS report, and we've had multiple of those for Selfridge over the years, and I'll discuss that in a little bit here. And what it is the ACUS report. It's really for the community. We use it at the installation, but this is where it looks at those accident potential zones. It looks at those noise contours, looks at standard land uses for those areas, and identifies what's recommended in those areas and what's not recommended. Like I said, accident potential zones, noise contours, highest concern. We provide recommendations. And again, like I talked about earlier, it's non-binding. These are just recommendations that are put together to help the community. Next slide. So these are, I took and went back and pulled up all our old ACUS reports, and these show you the accident potential zones, the noise contours for Selfridge over the years for the 4 ACUS studies we had. They change, when we do the ACUS study, what happens is it's driven by a change in mission, change in aircraft. So these are the periods when we changed our aircraft, because what changes under the ACUS is the noise contours not the clear zones, not the accident potential zones. Those are set and they're based upon, we fly turbine aircraft and our runway's so long, so then the ACUs identifies what the clear zones are and APZs. You will see though, in 1978, 1975, I guess I'll go up here. I'm just gonna point it out on the screen to show it out.
Feel free.
So you can see, well, we did have an assault runway, that's gone. That disappeared after 1970s. But if you look at the clear zones, they're slightly smaller. They're a little bit of a rectangle instead of a square. And in here too as well, it's a rectangle. But that changed between 95 and 99, it became a square. So it got a little bit wider. That's the only thing that's changed. If you look at the clear zone, accident potential zone 1 and accident potential zone 2, those haven't changed. Those have remained the same. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Get him down with the wall.
You can go to next slide, please. So I'm just going to brief a little bit more on this. This is the right out of the 2009 ACUS study, or ACUS report. It shows the accident potential zones and the clear zones. The clear zone is that square at the top. It's 3,000 by 3,000 feet. It starts right at the end of our runway. And then you have 3,000 by 5,000 feet for the APZ-1, and then 3,000 by 7,000 for APZ-2. Next slide. And then there's our existing noise contours that were developed in 2009 based upon our missions. And that would be updated if we ever changed our flight operations significantly enough to alter those noise contours. So if a new mission, new aircraft come in, we would do a new AQ study for that. There has been not a significant change since 2009 till now. Okay, so, and we talked a little bit about this. So the sooner we can get involved, the better in any part of the planning process. So we'd like to do that wherever we can. We appreciate everything Harrison Township does, Sabrina, and coordinating with us on everything so we can get you those comments and stuff in a timely manner. And then at the bottom there, if there's anything we can do to fix that process or update it in any way to make it better, we're willing to do that. Just want to let you know that. Next slide. And these are just a couple other things that are concerned that we'd look at. You could have smoke or dust or steam or something that's going to happen from construction or a factory or something gets put in. We'll look at that. We also look at lighting and glare and reflection. There could be a building or a billboard or something. If it's got really reflective surfaces, that could be a concern. Solar panels have been a concern in the past, but the newer ones that have come out are less of a concern. They're less reflective. So you can do glare studies, and we can assist with that if we need to. Next slide. This is another thing we look at. These are our imaginary surfaces. They're like a plane for aircraft obstructions, and we'll look at that. So the main ones, they go out at different ratios. Kind of try to see it in a 3D dimension there. And if you look at the figure in the bottom left, that's what's on our figure that we send out with the community comments. Kind of just shows it. It's showing a two-plane thing. It doesn't really represent it or show it good, but some of those other figures show it pretty good. The biggest one of concern is right off the end of the runway. It's kind of a conical shape. It's a 1 to 50 that we look at, and that's with respect to our approach and departure. So if anything's in the 1 to 50 for our takeoff, it can be a concern. Next slide. And then I just want to put a plug in for the S3. I know a lot of work was done with that. We got with the community and put that together. Where we sat down and we looked at, economic viability. We looked at our mission. We looked at ways we could cooperate, and I think it's a very good product. Next slide. So, and out of that, the stuff that put together, now we're kind of at the phase where we get together and understand, what it's about, collaboration, putting it together, and then if we want to take actions, the community's interested in doing that, then we can. Next slide. And these are just kind of repeating, kind of what the S3 was looking at, protecting health and safety of the residents and workers, promoting long-term compatibility between Selfridge and the community, economic viability. I mean, I understand that, you got to have your tax base, you have to do that. We've talked about a lot of that. There's ways to do that compatibly if we can, if we get into we do it early enough and figure out ways to cooperate and get together and look at other planning opportunities. So communicating, it gives us better communication, enhances it between elected officials and the Selfridge, and then there's tools, provides tools to assist in land use decisions, sorry. Next slide. Now the S3 is online on that site at the Macomb County. And one thing I did want to point out, and sorry about that acronym there, old CC, that's The Air Force likes to have a lot of acronyms in the DoD, and we forget to explain them, but that's Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. And that used to be called a bunch of different names, but what it is what it is now is that. And, but it's a very good program. It's a very good organization. That's who helped fund the S3. They paid for 90% of that, I believe. But Old CC can also fund a lot of the things that are in the current S3. There are implementation strategies and things to be done. They can fund, some of those can be funded in 100%. Some of them can be funded up to 90%, but they're all community driven. So if some of the strategies in the S3 are viable to the community, Harrison Township or Macomb County or Chesterfield Township, whoever, you got to put in a grant application for that, and then that funding can be provided. So we talked about, you were talking about updating your master plan. If you're looking at maybe incorporating some of these things, you could put in a grant application that could pay for maybe 90% of your master plan. And then you look at some of those things and you decide whether or not they need to be in it. So that's something that can be looked at, you know. So I wanted to make sure I put that plug in for that. And I believe we might be at the end of my slides. Megan was going to come up. She's going to talk BASH. That's another one of our acronyms. So excellent.
Yeah. I've got the fun acronym. My name is Megan Deneen. I am a wildlife biologist for USDA Wildlife Services. I run the BASH program at Selfridge. So BASH stands for Bird Aircraft Strike Hazard Program. So what does that mean? What do I do? Is always the number one question. So my job is to reduce the number of damaging bird strikes with aircraft. So it is always fatal for birds and wildlife. It's occasionally fatal, but it does cause damage. So what do we do exactly at Selfridge? So kind of my day-to-day is I have 4 steps that I take. So the first thing I do is I look at the habitat. So we're looking at the habitat on Selfridge and surrounding areas. So we're looking for food, water, and shelter. Which of those 3 components are there, and can we modify those? Can we take things out? Can we replant something else? Can we drain some water? The next step is going to be exclusion, so creating a physical barrier. So our fences at Selfridge are 8 feet tall because white-tailed deer can't jump over 8 feet. I know there's still deer on Selfridge, though. So, but it's just creating physical barriers, making it harder for the wildlife to get within proximity of the airport. The third option is then we go into harassment. So you may hear this when you drive by Selfridge. You can hear some propane cannons going off, maybe some pyrotechnics. So these are just things that we do to make it a very undesirable place for the birds and wildlife to be. And then the 4th step is removal. So one of the biggest things that I do is trapping and relocating raptors. So raptors are owls, hawks, and falcons. So right now it is snowy owl season. It's really fun. So it's just physically removing the hazard. We drive it away. We work with the DNR to have sites around the state. We release them and we say, don't come back. And then lethal removal on occasion. So that's a lot of your coyote and deer work. So that's kind of about what we do specifically on the airfield and on Selfridge property. Next slide, please. So what can we do outside of airfield property? So this is when we do a lot of that habitat work. So it's working with landowners, it's working with, just property owners, and what can we do to help them and help you guys with vegetation, water sources? I know they were talking about the pond earlier. Like, that was really great to hear that there was already things in place for this. So if you want more information on specifically like what you can do and what the FAA recommends, there is a website that you can go to and it'll lay it all out for you and just the recommendations that the FAA give out to all airports. Next slide, please. All right, so a little bit more visual for us here at Selfridge. So basically, we have our airfield property and then we have these perimeters that go out. And essentially that 5-mile range is what we're looking at when we look at off-site attractants is what we call it. So we try to work with all these areas outside. Obviously for Selfridge ourselves, we have a lake that takes up half of that. So it's a big problem. Next slide. Yeah, so why? Why is that a big deal? So statistically, there's tons of research across the country and across the world about wildlife strikes. And they have figured that 82% of all of our strikes occur below 1,500 AGL, so above ground level. Well, that 1,500 feet is 5 miles out from the airfield. So that is why we focus so much on that 5-mile radius, because focusing on that, we can try to reduce that 82%. So that's where that kind of number comes from. And then just some general numbers for you. So this is civilian airfields. This is more of like your DTW O'Hare rather than Selfridge and military. But on average, we get over 200,000 strikes a year involving birds. And you can see there over 5,000 with mammals, 4,000 with bats. You know, those are the three things that we specifically have at Selfridge. 600 reptiles, we don't really have that much of a problem up in Michigan for that. So next slide. So looking at this, we're looking at, okay, 5 miles, they take off and they come back, right? That's all they do. Not necessarily. So these are the patterns that you're going to see at Selfridge. You're going to see these arrivals and departures and the close pattern work. All of that is, you know, you can see is within that 5-mile radius. So that's why doing, you know, collaborating with you guys and collaborating with any sort of development can really help us, you know, keep those hazards down for Selfridge. Next slide. All right, I believe that goes to, back to you. All right, Mr. Baker.
Bear with me on this. So this was Tiwa. She was she's our assistant airfield manager. She was going to brief these tonight, but I know enough to be dangerous. My best at this. So this pertains to FAA Part 77, which is a requirement for proponents that are doing construction or alteration within proximity to an airfield. Now this is one's not a recommendation. This one is a federal requirement for a form to be filled out whenever you're doing construction that. And I'll explain the guidelines for this when you're doing that in proximity to the airfield. Now, it's not going to, typically this isn't to look at something to approve or disapprove it. What it is to give guidance to the airport that something's being put in place and where it's at and what are the interference issues with it. And they'll develop a NOTAM, which is a notice to air emissions. I'm sorry, because there's another one that's notice to airmen. So I have to always look at that one and try and remember what it is. But so notice to air emissions will come out, and our airfield manager will handle that, and then she communicates that to all our flying units, so they know about what's going on and to be concerned with that. That would be like a crane that might be up or something like that, so our flight mission would know about it. Next slide. All right, so, and then there's a 45-day process for that. It's covered under 14 CFR Part 77.9. And there's a figure I have for this, but what it does is it's 1 to 100. So it goes 1 to 100 out from the base from our airfield. So I was talking 1 to 150. So you got your 1 to 150 and you got your 1 to 100. This is a lot more restrictive. That's because even though it's on obstruction for our aircraft, some of these things could be obstruction for our communications or something like that. So you put a cell tower up or you put a communications device up, it could cause communication issues. So they'll look at that stuff as well when they're looking at these. Next slide. And this is all the ORs. So usually it's just the 1 to 200, but this is just cut and paste right off the FAA site. And the FAA is the one that manages this. It's not Selfridge. It's the FAA that's coordinated with respect to this. We get communicated with, like the FAA will get the submittal, they'll get with our TERPS office, which handles instrument landing procedures and equipment on the base. So if you're coming in and it's cloudy and you're trying to land, there's instruments that shoot out and communicate with the aircraft. So those are the things they look at, and they make sure that that's not going to be an issue. Next slide. This is a figure. Now, I did bring a... It just might be, I brought this, I'm going to leave this with Sabrina so that she can have it. This is the FAA, it's a lot better figure of that, and then I put the other figure I showed on the back, so this is just something for you to watch in the future. But if you look on the far right, this just shows the 1 to 100 as it goes out. And as you can see, 20,000 feet out from the installation, it goes up to 200. So there might be something that goes into those areas, either it's a structure or it could be a crane. So even if a crane's going up just temporarily during construction, they're required to file this notification with the FAA. So it might not be something that's related to the Planning Commission. It might be something the building department, let's say, putting an air conditioning unit on top of a flat story roof, they got to put a crane out to do that, then there should be a notification to the FAA. So we had some issues with that in the past where there weren't notifications done. So I just wanted to let you know about that. But most crane operators, people that do that, they're professionals, they know to do that. So if they're not doing it, they know they're not following the regulations because it takes 45 days. So if they have a contract that they want to get done next week or 2 weeks from now, they're taking a shortcut to not do that. And then we don't know about it. Our aircraft go up, there could be issues. Next slide. And like I said, this is all managed by the FAA. There's contacts down below. There's a section specifically for wind turbines because those do have issues with radar have issues with aircraft and stuff, so there's a whole branch just for that. And then normal questions are the individuals on top. This is just cut and paste right off their site, and there's information there, the link's right there. Think of the slides, you go into it, you can click right to it, and it'll take you right to the link. Okay, next slide. That's it. Hopefully, hopefully I covered everything you had questions on, but we're here tonight, and I guess I should have said this earlier, please interrupt me, and I didn't. But if you did have any questions or you want to go back and talk about any of the sections, please let me know, and we can do that. Regarding ES3, if you want to get together and have some kind of workshop or something this year and talk about some of that, have us pull resources in, we're more than willing to do that too as well, so.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Thank you.
Very, very good. And Lieutenant Colonel Urban and Ms. Deneen, thank you very much. I actually do have a question.
Okay.
You had mentioned glare studies
Mm-hmm.
and regarding solar panels.
Right.
We are just in the process of kind of dipping our toes in that pond,
Okay.
so to speak. So there's information that's available for us to include.
Yeah, so with respect to that, if it's an energy project, and I didn't cover it on here, there is some coordination done for that, and there's ways to do glare study, but I can give you the specifics on that. You want me to give that to
If you could
Sabrina?
supply that
Yes.
to Sabrina, yeah, I think it would
Absolutely.
come in handy for us to take into consideration, you know. Say that again?
I knew you were gonna ask.
Yeah, yeah, well, it's.
I mean, there is some things with that, and I guess I didn't brief that there. I didn't anticipate any like wind turbine towers or something that we'd be dealing with that, but it is an energy project, and there is a specific requirements for energy projects, so I'll provide all that to Sabrina. Yep.
Excellent. And did you want to
No,
ask
I
it?
was gonna
You're
ask
good?
about the solar panels.
Okay, all right, I had it down. Okay, commissioners, any other questions?
Well, maybe when we do kick off our master planning process, Selfridge would be interested in, at least sitting at the workshop table.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea.
Absolutely, we would be more than willing to bring whatever resources you need to that.
We are all about tools.
Okay.
This is a nice, well-faceted team, so.
And I'm wondering, how the raptors are actually trapped? And what about all the wildlife at the golf course that
All right,
gets in
well,
the way of?
I'm gonna turn that over to Megan. Okay, if you don't mind, Megan.
There's the biggest bullfrogs ever at the golf course. Like, I could see an
Yes, there's-
aircraft striking them would be a problem.
If you ever want me to go to your schools and talk to classrooms, let me know. I love doing this. So we have a variety of different traps. I think the most popular one we have, and you can see it at airports across the country, is so we take a pigeon, so it's just a feral pigeon. We put it in a cage, and so it's a big cage like this. And then on the top of it is the trap. So the trap is a spring that is two doors being held up with a trip pole. So if you're a red-tailed hawk, you're checking it out, and you see it, you're gonna dive down and hit that trip pole and get caught up in the trap. So he's up here, he's freaking out, but he's not getting hurt, he's totally safe. Pigeon's underneath, totally safe, a little traumatized, but he's fine. And so it's something that we check multiple times a day, and when we find them, we use welder's gloves, pick them up, and then we do ban them with federal bans. So the same bans that you'll see on, geese and ducks and stuff, maybe in the spring. And then we also have, we put padded footholds out, so they are, imagine like the cartoons of like the big bear claw things. All right, so now imagine, remove those claws, pad it, modify the springs, so you can put your own fingers in there. I always do that in front of classrooms, like college classes, like you can put your own fingers in there, it doesn't hurt. And then we place those in areas that are really popular, because birds they are creatures of habit, so they like their certain perch places. We'll put one of those up there. When they sit on it, they get, their legs will get caught, and then we just go and pick them up, among other things. But I could go on this for another hour.
Okay. And then a forced relocation.
And then a relocation, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the golf course, because we're discussing retention ponds and detention ponds, and yet the golf course right on base has ponds.
I actually laughed when I moved to Selfridge. I was like, wait, is this real? This is what? So yeah, nope, the golf course is definitely, I work with a golf manager there. We work together very closely, just keep working on the geese and stuff that are in that area.
I need a dog or something because
I
it's
do
not
actually
working
use a
once
dog.
there.
Yeah, I have a Cocker Spaniel who has been trained to chase geese, so it's really nice in the summertime when there's golfers out there. I learned very early on they don't appreciate pyrotechnics when they're golfing, so I use the dog.
So, if we wanted to plan for, including, Selfridge contacts at, any and all future workshops, what kind of, contact, timeline do you require in order to participate?
If I'm available, I can be there. I'm not gonna, it all depends on availability. It's the next day and you're like, oh, we forgot to let Selfridge know. But, if you can give us a couple weeks, that'd be great.
Okay.
But if I can't be there, someone else will be there. We'll make sure, like, if you let us know, we're not gonna not show up, we'll have someone there.
Okay, excellent. And then you've already have a well-established relationship with Sabrina, so.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great. Okay, good. Well, thank you very much for coming. We appreciate the information. We really appreciate the information, and we look forward to working together to make sure that we're all on the same page.
All right, thank you, ma'am, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Any correspondence? Comments from the planner?
Yes, I wanted to just share, we talked about doing the master plan update. We got some good news from Eagle that the grant application that we submitted to help pay for half of the master plan was approved, and maybe they liked it so much that they actually found a different funding source for it so that they could push it up to start
That's
in
wonderful.
July,
That's
potentially,
wonderful.
as opposed to having to wait until
September?
either, it could have been October 1st, but even lately, it might even be calendar year
Good
2024. So we might be able to start work on it early. So that's good news. Looking forward to that. And, to engaging with Selfridge and great timing in that regard. We had a tech team meeting. It was packed full of cases. We had a case, I'll just share, most of them were discussion-only cases. One was the triangle at Jefferson, Metro Parkway, and Prentice, that development there. A gentleman is proposing a single-family residential planned unit development for much of that triangle piece.
Really?
So that was a discussion, and they gave him some suggestions and tips, and, here's some things to consider. I suspect, I just got a call from their engineer today. I suspect they're looking at coming on a future agenda soon. There was the property owners of the old St. John Hospital site were exploring some ideas for potential reuse of that facility. So we gave some feedback to them. Not sure what's going to come out of that. It seemed like very preliminary. Just here's some ideas we've got. Let's get it out on the table, and I think we're able to provide some advice. A property owner, this was the Captain's Party Store, and two requests. One was potentially to expand their party store with the adjacent property that they own, potential to put in a gas station actually at that location, kind of convert it or turn it into a gas station. There'd be a long process with that. They also have property across the street that is industrial zone. Had some discussions about potential expansion of a parking lot for an existing trucking business. So both cases were discussion-only cases. We would be seeing either one of those projects in front of us for any of them to move forward. And the last case was Ashby Preserve, just a small accessory shed on their residential site. That one was approved. So,
Great.
those were the cases.
Well, thank you. Before we get to, comments from the floor. Go ahead and come forward. Let us know who you are and your address, please.
Hi, my name is Linda Brozovic. I live at 26861 Pontchartrain, at the middle of the street of all that's going on in the end. I realize that piece of property is going to be developed. There's just a couple concerns. I can't believe for 28 homes, you're going to have 2 driveways. I sure hope they all work different shifts, because they're all going to try and get out of that driveway at 7 o'clock in the morning. I don't think they're going to be happy. That's one thing. My question is, he was talking about money for roads. I don't know, we're on a residential road. We have to have 51% of votes to get that road done. If you've driven down there lately, if you go to the half that's towards Metro Beach, you're not gonna have much of a spring system on your car left. Bad. This last big rain we had, the other end in Jefferson flooded. The poor house was underwater. How many votes is this complex going to have? Are they going to be one vote for the 51%? Are they going to be the 6 votes for the people that live facing Pontchartrain? Are they going to be 28 votes? What are we having to deal with as we have to get this road repaved? That was my other question. And the other one that they pointed out, our chain link fence that goes around it, when it was a school, it was necessary. It's still on the plan. Are we still going to have a chain link fence going along Pontchartrain? And lighting is my last one. Are we going to light this up like a baseball field? Or is that going to be so that it's just a street light at the end of the street and something for them? That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much.
B as in boy, ROZOBIC.
Happily married it. There you go. Well, before we get to the very end, I want to take this opportunity to welcome our newest member, Mr. Tim Duncan. Welcome to the team. We're excited to have you here. Another first responder, yes?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you. We look forward to having your expertise as part of our conversations.
Thank you.
So thank you for joining. Are any other conversation from the commissioners? I'm sorry?
I
Please.
just want, maybe as part of this master planning process, we can take a look at our submittal deadlines. Because it seems like it's happened a couple of times where things get to the planner, the review happens, and then they're turning them around, and then there isn't time for a review. So I don't know what the solution is, if it's a longer initial submittal time, and then a deadline for resubmittal. I mean, we can talk about what time that would take, but I mean, this is kind of a waste for them to work on their updated plans, us to look at it, and then not be able to really review it or see it. I mean, and that's happened a couple of times, so, and I don't know, what the. But I mean, they're meeting the initial deadline, right? So then they're getting the comments, they're turning it around and resubmitting it. So do we need to build in time for there to be, that's a question amongst us to think about, I
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
guess.
definitely something that we ought to think about. In my experience, inevitably, whenever that review letter is sent out by the fire chief, the engineer, and the planner, even if it was 2 hours before the meeting, they would want to make a revised plan and
Right.
submit it to you.
And then they
on the
come in
fly.
and roll it out.
And we always tell them, don't do it. You're just kind of causing confusion, and it probably doesn't hurt your case, but they do it anyway. So I would say even if we change our timeframes, and we definitely could look at them and should, I don't think it's going to solve the problem. That just desire to come with that plan and say, I made your changes, I don't know.
And then you were addressing timeline for master plan preparation and planning as well.
Well, I was just
We
suggesting.
used to have a 6-week upfront deadline, and, we tried to be more responsive to that, so that would eliminate the possibility for somebody, for example, to, come on subsequent months or something like that, and we reduced it to 28 days for an initial submittal, 4 weeks for an initial submittal, and then we reduced it to 2 weeks for a resubmittal of something that was previously
And
reviewed.
maybe that's too
To
brief.
be, more accommodating to timeframes, so.
Which is
and
fine for
there's that
something that's not
balance.
very complicated.
And then, of course, we like our discussion-only tech team meetings. That's what we've been encouraging people to do, is to come and meet with us to hammer out some of these issues. And we always encourage them, before you submit, give us a draft. We'll take a look at them. We'd be glad to provide you with some comments, but you know how that is. Deadlines are deadlines, right? And
We're always
they
behind.
often don't make that call or send us, that in advance. So we can only do so much, but
So regarding this discussion regarding the master plan coming, and money involved, coming up, you said June, sometime in June? Do we have anything more definitive than that? Or
no, usually what Eagle needs to do is they'll supply the township administration with a contract, basically an agreement for the project.
All right.
There's standard language that needs to be resolved, and
So,
It will probably be on a quarter, like on.
It'll be- yeah.
Either like June, starting third quarter of this year, or
Yes.
fourth quarter of this year.
the way that it looks like it would start maybe the third quarter of this year.
so in preparation for the impending plan, can we start planning now? Can we start prepping for items that we want to make? Can we get a workshop going? Can we get a list?
You would want to wait.
Okay.
You're not really able to officially start it until, it's certainly not expending funds that would be reimbursed until you have that agreement. in
So
place. You
even
can
as.
start thinking in your head, okay, here, what are some things that we ought to talk about, but we should hold off with
Anything formal?
anything.
Okay,
Yep.
got it. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Anything else from the board? Our next meeting is Thursday, April 20th, 2023. May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Ms. Devlin, Mr. Mulder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Why can't I not see that? 31.